One Education video. Today we're going to talk about how we decide what to feed our horse and how much to feed our horse. The first thing that we're going to look at is size. So if you see this big handsome boy behind me, this is Quinn. Quinn is a big boy. He's a perch cross. He is big and big boned, and he obviously needs more food than someone who's smaller, who we'll compare to in a minute. But we also have to think about his size and his breed type and his weight. So Quinn is a bigger draft build, and those horses, as you can see by his size here, tend to be what we call easier keepers, meaning they require less grain and hay than a horse who is his same size and maybe a thoroughbred, because they run a little hotter, so they burn through their food faster. Quinn also is a lower energy guy, so he's not expending as much calories as somebody who's jumping and cantering and going cross country or doing harder dressage work. So the things that we factor in when we talk about how much to feed our horse is their size, their current weight. So if Quinn was very thin right now, which, look at him, he's not, but if Quinn was really skinny right now, we would have to feed him more to fatten him up. Or if Quinn was really, really pudgy, which we'll show you an example of that as well, we would have to feed him a little less than we typically would somebody his size and workload. So we have size, their workload. If you have a horse that's working really hard, who's an athlete, just like if people are an athlete, we tend to feed them a little bit more than somebody who maybe doesn't do as much activity. And their kind of breed and body type is another big one. So a bigger draft horse versus a bigger thoroughbred are going to eat different things. So we talk about their weight, their workload, and their size. And those are the biggest contributors. But then there's a few little sub-contributors, like, has my horse's situation just changed? Did my horse go from in the stable to now living on grass? Because a horse living on grass is going to require much less food because they're going to be grazing all day. Or is my horse pregnant or nursing? Things like those change how much we're feeding because they're burning more calories nursing, but they might not be exercising. So all of those things are little contributing factors of how we're going to decide to feed our horse. So Quinn here, being a big guy, he gets lots of local hay and very little grain. And that sustains him for his workload and his size. We're going to now compare to a few different horses, similar size and smaller size, and decide how we would go about figuring out what to look at is Nate. So Nate is similar in size to Quinn, but Nate is a thoroughbred. So thoroughbreds generally run a little bit hotter and expend more energy when they're being ridden. So it also depends on the thoroughbred's workload. Thoroughbreds that you see at the racetrack require a ton of food to keep their energy so peaked that they can run and sprint as fast as they do. Now, Nate is not a track thoroughbred. Nate is a lesson horse, but he does a little bit more challenging things like cantering and jumping courses and going cross country. So he requires a little bit more energy than what Quinn would require, as well as Quinn's a bigger breed. Nate is a thoroughbred, so he's burning more calories. So as you see, Nate is quite a bit leaner by design than Quinn is. So Nate actually gets way more food than Quinn, who's a little bit taller than him. Nate gets local hay, alfalfa hay, and more grain to maintain his healthy weight. Next, we're going to look at a couple ponies and decide how we decide what to look at is Blue. Blue is one of our amazing lesson ponies, but he is a pony. So as you see, the difference with Quinn, whose back was as tall as my head, I'm quite a bit taller than Blue. Now, Blue is still a really hard worker. He's like Nate in the sense that he burns extra calories, but he's smaller, so he requires a lot less food to maintain his diet. Blue actually eats quite similar to Quinn. He eats mostly local hay, very little grain, and then he also gets to graze in the summertime only when the weather's nice. So Blue doesn't require as much food as a bigger horse because he's quite a bit smaller. So it's important to decide by his work, his weight, and his exercise what we're going to feed. Talk about a little bit of weight changes. So a horse like Monet, who very similar to Quinn is a bigger, heavier build, she's actually quite a bit overweight. So you can see by her tummy, her barrel is quite full, and that's going to affect not only her work ability. If you've ever, been a little heavier or a little less fit in your life, you know you can't work for as long without getting tired and needing breaks, but it's also not good for her health. Just like with people, it's important to maintain a healthy weight balance. It's the same with our horses. They can get conditions called founder, which is very serious for their feet and could be fatal depending on the severity. They also can just be in general bad health and it affect them long term. So we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on horses like Monet who are prone to be a little heavier weight-wise. So Monet is prone to be a little overweight. She's very mildly overweight right now just because we had an entire week off with smoke, but we have been keeping an eye on it. So with the less work, she got a little bit less food to make sure that that week off she didn't spike in her weight again. So Monet is a great candidate for mostly local hay. If Monet is working extra hard, we can up her feed and decide on that. But based on her body type, her workload, we have decided that she is a great candidate to stay on a very local, low sugar, low carb, low calorie diet to keep her weight the same. Now, there are a few other factors when we think about what to decide to feed our horses. We can decide on, like we talked about, their workload, their size, and their current weight condition. The few other factors, like if they're pregnant, nursing, or if we're trying to make changes in their health, or if they've made changes in their environment. But there are some few other things to decide. If you've ever seen our horse Kieran, Kieran is diabetic. He actually has issues with sugar. So we have to feed him differently than we would feed anybody else. Same for horses that have had conditions like Founder. They are not able to have sugar, so things like treats or really high sugar grains are not good for them. So we have to look at them as a whole and decide what to feed our horses. We have a great team here at A&T between myself, Michelle, our barn manager, and some of our other girls that monitor all of our horses' health regularly, and we make adjustments to their feed every single month depending on where they're at weight, health, and work-wise. So we're super excited to be always on top and giving them the best care possible. Thanks for following along. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video.